And we're live.
Yay! All right. So I am here. This is Deborah Goley, and I am coming to you live this morning from Goodyear, Arizona. And I have had the opportunity over the past few months to bring you art lessons. And it's been wonderful that we could meet together. And if you catch this later or you happen to be watching now, you'll be able to paint along with me at your own convenience. And we call this Tuesdays in Tondo, which means we're doing art in the round. Back in the Renaissance years of art, the actual sculpture was created in the round. And here's one done by Michelangelo. I thought this was really fun to pull out with the Christ child, the baby, the infant. But it's done in stone on a tablet like this, and that might have been hung over the hearth or in the doorway area. So I think it's fun to also look at art history and come up with ways to title our art, right? So here we are together doing the round. And wouldn't you imagine that today we are actually doing a round object? So we are going to be doing a moon. So we do have a full moon that is round. So we are together doing a round object. With that, I will go ahead and tilt my camera. It might seem a little dizzy as I turn it upside down, so it's right side up to you. And we'll get started. Okay, so I am going to flip it, rotate it, and pull it down here. Now you get to see everything I am working on. And what I love about this scene is that I have my, you could call it my harvest moon since we're in the fall season here. I have the quality of light, and it's gradating from the moon out to the darker edges of my canvas. And we're going to have the choice of picking either a warm color, light illuminating from the moon, or a cool color. So you may be into warm colors, or you may be into more of the cool colors. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's go over exactly what you're going to need for today, because we certainly don't want to be without all our tools that we need. In your handout, if you had looked on the city's website with arts and culture, you would have noted that you would have needed 8 watercolors. So I have a little pan here. These come in, the craft section. They're not expensive at all. So these are just student grade. They're not professional grade. If you want to go the professional route, of course, you can go and get tubed watercolor in all the colors that you want. But we're just practicing during our lunch hour today and working on how to gradate light. I also had on the list some water-soluble markers, and I thought this would be really fun to try our hand at these. I also had on the list a permanent marker. I don't normally like to use Sharpies because they're not acid-free. So if you have something other than this to make the black, the really dark, intense black that is acid-free, that would be great. India ink was optional on your list. I love using this waterproof ink because it doesn't muddy up the rest of my painting. This was optional, so this would be in lieu of a permanent marker. And of course, we have black in our palette here, and I can show you how to use that. I have a little sponge handy just to kind of sop up things as I go. I do have masking. We're not going to use this today, but if you were to want to mask out these little dots, this would be a great thing to use. It's just like rubber cement, only it comes with a little, like a little dabber that you can just make little dots with or outline something. So I like having that handy. I have a kneadable eraser in case my lines get too dark with my pencil, which is, here's my school pencil. A kneadable eraser you can find at any art store. This was not on your list, but you're going to want to have this in your art box at some point for all the different mediums. So I like having that handy if I draw too dark on my watercolor paper. I'm going to be working on watercolor today. I don't typically work in watercolor with these projects I've been doing with the city. I'm usually standing at the easel, but with watercolor, it's going to drip if I'm standing at the easel. So I definitely want to be sitting and working on a flat surface. You can see here that I have my paper taped down. This is just painter's tape. I don't leave it overnight because obviously some of the moisture could get in there and rip my paper. But I do keep a little 3M tape handy. And then I also have a 140-pound watercolor paper. So we've got paper, we talked about paint, and we need to talk about our lovely brushes. So watercolor brushes are not too much different from the horsehair sable brushes we've been using in our acrylic classes, but they do have what they call an aqua watercolor brush that's like a flat head. It does still feel smooth like your makeup brush, but this is going to be great for making our rings around the moon. But you can still do it with a number 6. My number 6 is pretty much my go-to on just about everything because I can do fine points, but I can also push the head of the brush down and get a fat line with it. This one we probably won't use today. This is called a rigger. That's just something else you might want to have in your arsenal to do really thin lines. Yes. So that's a lot of fun. We've got all our tools handy, and I think we're ready to go. Oh, I have a yucky cup of water, not to be mistaken by my drinking water. That's why I use a yucky blue cup. And I do have napkins handy for cleaning off my brush and dabbing somewhere where I don't want. All right, with all of that, let's get started. So I'm going to use my pencil, and I'm going to draw a circle. Now, you could take your water cup and just trace the circle. You could freehand it. You could trace around your tape ring. You can freehand it. If you freehand it, honestly, I think that that's going to be just fine. Because remember, this is a watercolor, and there is nothing perfect with what we're doing. The water is going to flow freely and kind of mix with our moonlight. Now, I drew the circle right here, kind of offset, because I want to kind of have the rings circling the moon like this. You could put your moon in the middle. It doesn't really matter, but I just wanted it more asymmetrical look. See, I'm using that kneadable eraser. And there's my moon. Now we're going to do rings around the moon. I don't need to draw all the rings. I'm just going to let my brush do the work. I think that's what's fun about it. Okay, y'all ready to go? This will be so fun. Now I mentioned warm and cool colors. So you're going to have to decide, are you going to be a warm color or a cool color encircling the moon? So in my picture here, or in my painting here, I had more of the cool colors. You see green, you see blues, you see purples. So that's what my sample has. I think I will kind of stick with that just so that you are familiar with what's right in front of you. If you decide to go with more of the warm colors, you see the pinks that are made, and the reds, and the red violets, and orange. So you have to decide what you're into. I just thought the moon would be a fun project for us to do. We had a great full moon not too long ago, and it's coming up again, and it's fall. And I love that I don't love that the evenings are getting darker, but I love silhouettes and seeing the sculpture that the trees make against the sky. All right, here we go. So I've got my moon shape done. And if you're just chiming in, this is giving you a little time to set up there. And next we're going to take our brush, which is, I told you, is like my 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch flat brush, but you could use your number 6. And I am going to start out with probably a green tone. I'm going to go ahead and make the circles of the moon. We can come back later and put a little yellow in our moon, because for the most part, I'm just going to kind of keep this white, because I don't have a white in my palette. You can buy white in the tube. Like this one happens to be a Chinese white, which will be a different, there'll be a different white than what's on your canvas. So just know that. All right, here we go. I'm going to water down my green because remember, I want to start light. I don't want it to be too heavy. And I'm just going to make that circle around the moon. I'm going to take my napkins, which are right here, and I'm going to dab at that because I don't want it as dark as it came out. I want to graduate from light to dark. All right. So now I might take just a different color green, and I'm going to kind of dab that out. You can use your sponge. Make sure it's pretty watered down. This is so fun. I love, love, love to paint. Most every day I am painting. It's very relaxing to me. Don't want to get too dark too fast. Maybe I need to use more water, less pigment. I'm just making rings around the moon. Now, how hard is that? Not hard. Let's mix it up a little bit. How about a little blue? Oh my gosh, loving that. We're going to put another pass at it as we go. So that's why I don't want to get too dark too soon. Plus, we don't want a big swimming pool. When you're doing watercolor, you don't want to have a big pool happen. How fun! Look at this. You get to paint during your lunch hour. It's been great broadcasting these classes because people around the world are chiming in with us in different time zones. So we've tried different time slots. We come to you in the Thursday evenings, Saturday mornings, Tuesday at lunch, just to give everybody an opportunity to paint live. I think painting live together is really wonderful. One, I get to see your work, and you can ask me questions if you have something to share with me. So, yes. Wow. I love too how my purples and greens are mixing together to make light, to make a new color emanating from the moon. So again, if you don't like the cool colors, you could have chose the warm colors like a harvest moon. So it's up to you. I am just giving you ideas on what to paint, but you're the artist. Giving you ideas and some technique. Oh, got to get darker as I go all the way out. Look how I'm going to let that, I'm not going to dab on that. I'm going to let that go. So just going to keep on letting that do its thing. Wow. And I even love how it's the watercolor is mixing with that last ring that I made around the moon. You know, it's really hard to talk when you paint because you're using both sides of your brain. So if you hear me stall for a second, it's because I'm kind of switching back and forth. When I have my students in person, I usually have classical music on so that they can't sing along with it, or it doesn't distract them, because speech lives in your left brain. All right, I want to get a little bit darker and intense down here. I think that, you know, the Crayola brand, any of the store-bought watercolor sets seem to do the trick. You're just going to have more intense color around the edges and less water, like you could really just not dip your brush so much in the water. Okay, so you can see how this is my light source. Well, usually we have to figure out where our light source is, but we know where it is today. And we're just making sure that our rings get darker as we get further away from the light. So that's pretty easy. So even if you're just chiming in, you can make some rings around the moon easily. Now, I can't draw these little red dots in while it's wet. And I'm most likely going to do it with this washable Crayola marker that I have here. If you did your moon composition in the warm colors, you're probably going to want to use a green, something that's opposite on the color wheel. So green would be opposite red as your little buds that might still be, or little flurries of whatever's left on the trees during the fall. So this just happens to be kind of my fall trees. They've lost most of their leaves, but the light's picking up some of the red in the leaves. Or berries, if you want it to be a Christmas type theme, it could be berries or something like that. Okay, while this is still drying, and before I go any further, I'm just going to add a little bit of yellow to my moon. Not a lot, and it's going to be pretty watered down. I just want my moon to glow. And now that you're seeing my circle moon, I'm going to try to erase my pencil line because I really don't want to see that pencil line. It's hard if you've already painted over it to erase it. So you could have painted right up to the line. Please don't use a pink eraser. You can see that I take the erasers off of every pencil so that I'm not tempted to erase. The pink eraser will actually leave a pink mark or scar. You might rub the metal part where the eraser is attached and scar your paper. So I try to stay away, and all my students go, oh, there's Miss Foley. She's giving us a pencil without an eraser. I just feel like too, when you're tempted to erase all the time when you're working, then you don't stay in your creative brain. So you're just too worried. And besides, you could make an accident into something happy. An opportunity, a design bonus. Okay, I'm just adding a little bit of yellow to my picture here. Man on the moon, something happening. Not a whole lot. Like I said, I don't have any white in my palette. White's not even a color. So I'm just going to leave little pockets of white. Okay, now I'm going to go and make a few more rings around the moon. Just some more areas of interest. Maybe just I'm going to turn my brush on its side this time and make like a skinnier line. It's a little dark, so I'm going to kind of dab at it with my tissue, my napkin. If you have a sponge, kitchen sponge, you could use that. This will be just kind of a nice little fall backdrop to some of your decor that you're putting out, maybe your pumpkins, owls. Speaking of owls, we're going to be painting an owl next month. And he'll be good enough to keep out till Christmas if you want to put a hat on him, a little Christmas hat or something. Wow, look, just putting a second layer of that purple or purple over the blue, I get a blue violet. And it's even darker still. I'm not using black. I'm just building up color with color. I'm building up the darkness with what I have. I absolutely love trying to stay away from my black and brown because I can make browns with all of my primaries and secondaries, and I can actually make a very dark value just by what I have. I can even put some green in it. What's happening when I put the green in? It almost looks black, right? That is so fun. This is something you could do with your family members, like replay the video and do it with your grandkids over the holidays. Could have a little paint party. Say, we're going to paint the moon. And they'll be like, what are you talking about? You can say, we're going to lasso the moon, right? Because we're going round and round like a lasso. When I'm doing these live sessions and I can't hear your voices while it's muted, I end up creating these silly little puns and sayings that I'm only laughing at myself. I'm sure nobody else thinks they're fun. Amusing myself. Okay. I'm just kind of adding a little more color. I think I need to add a little more blue to get this darker in this corner. This is outer space. So I want outer space to be really dark. If you're using the warm colors, you probably are going to add purple to your red so that you can get some dark. And believe it or not, if you added green to your red, you would be getting a nice deeper value. It may not be the color that you would pick to wear, but like, see, I'm going to add red to that, and that makes that even darker down there. Color mixing can be very fascinating. Ooh, I love how that's bleeding right there. That's really cool. Okay, I need to stop at some point and let this dry, because when I add my Crayola marker, or even if you're painting on your leaves or berries, then it might mix with my green and my purple. So I need to give it some time. I need to give it a little time. And since we only have about half an hour to 40 minutes left, we definitely want to kind of stay clear of the areas that we won't have to paint over or do over or mess with. We just don't want to keep on going over it when we got so much more to accomplish here. So I'm going to kind of dab at it myself just to get it to lighten up and dry a little bit faster. And if you spilled it way outside the tape, you shouldn't have to care about that unless when we pull the tape, there's a lot of moisture down there. Could rip our painting. When you pull the tape, always pull it away from the painting, not into the painting. All right, I'm going to wash my brush off while I'm waiting on paint to dry. I think that's an old adage, right? Waiting on paint to dry. Now, how do you wash your brushes? I think I've talked to you about this before, so if it's old school, don't worry about it. For you that have not, or just tuning in, you really just want to swish your brush around in the water like I'm doing here and go back and forth on the napkin till it comes clean. Don't squeeze the brush. If you do squeeze the brush, then you're going to find that you're going to loosen the hairs outside of the metal. The hair is glued into the metal part, and you're going to be sad because then you're going to have to buy a new brush. And brushes aren't cheap. And once you've got a good brush that you really love, you really don't want to destroy it just by cleaning it incorrectly. I love this particular brush. So if you're going to ever go out and invest in a watercolor brush, I love it because it actually has a beveled edge on the end, and I can actually use it on wet areas. But I can actually drag paint and make little limbs and stems and fence posts. And so this is a really nice little tool. Of course, you could use a toothpick, twig, any other thing that you can move paint along. So that's my favorite brush. And then my second favorite brush is my number 6. It may look like it's old and gross because it's splitting hairs, but it's really not. Like once I get it wet, it's going to come to a fine point. And so this is your most useful brush in many ways for all kinds of things. If this is all you had today, that just means that you were pushing down with the full breadth of the brush to get the ring, right? You didn't need to have my 1/2 inch flat. You could use this to get that ring with the breadth of the brush tip. To make fine lines, of course, you would hold it in a certain way, and you would only be letting the tip hit the canvas. Okay, things look like they're drying, and you're probably tired of hearing me chat. So I'm going to talk a little bit about dots. So I have a piece of scrap paper here, and I was experimenting to see about dry time, and I'm going to show you what your options are. So if you do have the Crayola marker, it needs to say washable on it, right? Because that way, well, in this case, you probably don't want it washable because it will bleed. But I tend to actually use these in a lot of my watercolor drawings, almost like using a watercolor pencil. A watercolor pencil is something like this. It looks like a colored pencil, but colored pencils are made from wax. This is not. It's got pigment inside, and when mixed with water, it will actually do a blending good job. So I have here a Crayola marker. They come in sets of like 8, 10 like this, and it'll say washable on it. You probably have some sitting around the house. You've probably used them with the grandkids, or they're in your kids' marker box. You might just keep them in a little baggie like I have here, so that I don't confuse them with the ones that are not washable. So need to look for that little note on there. Okay, so I'm going to practice over here, and I'm just going to show you. You can make dots. And I was thinking it might be best to do 20 to 24 dots. Just pick a number. I think that's a good number to fit this size canvas of a 9 by 12. Plus, you know, I actually had a kid that's close to that number, so it's like, it's fresh on my mind. So what we're going to do is place them randomly. That's going to, wherever they are, that's going to help us determine too where our lovely black lines are going to go. Do you see how important it is to put the random dots on first? Because if I draw the black lines on first, and then I try to put the dot on the black line, it's not going to work. Okay, so just saying, that won't be a good thing. All right, here we go. Now, if you don't have a marker today and you're just going to be using some red acrylic paint, you could be even doing this in acrylic. That's going to be fine. You don't even have to worry about bleeding because your background will be dry and you'll be able to put the acrylic paint on top. But for me, I don't have acrylic today. I will Thursday night on the, I believe it's the 5th of November, you get to paint along with me. Actual big leaves. So that'll be fun. I'll show you a sample in a little bit. So if you're doing it in paint, you're going to take your number 6. Do you see how I just gently put a dot on there with my number 6? Your background needs to be dry. Why? If it's not, you're going to get that. See my little goof up right there? Because that was not dry and it's going to bleed. I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world. You know, maybe your leaf has a little crazy outline around it. Maybe you don't want them to be bright and cheery lined as opposed to that one. Okay, if you want to keep little white dots in the middle, then you would paint in a donut fashion, like that. Okay, I barely have any paint on the brush whatsoever when I make the dots. If you need to practice on a side piece of paper, do so before you do this, because you won't be able to take off the red without it mixing with your background. All right, so let's make 25 dots. Okay, I'm going to start near the moon because this is still wet way out here. In my sample here, I have, oh, I've got 5, which is a good odd number. I'm going to use my brush. I'm going to do both. I'm going to use some with my brush and some with my marker just so I can show everybody. So here is my number 1. I love odd numbers, so it's interesting that I have 5 planned out inside the moon. So there's 3 dots. Oh, see how easy this is? Okay, I see a big wet area, and look what happened. You see my little spread right there? So I can take my sponge real quickly, and I can try to clean that up as best I can. But now I'm going to end up either making a black limb to cover that and then wait a little bit longer and do a red dot there. So that's going to end up being a little happy accident. So I see there's still some wetness there, so I need to avoid that area. I could put one right here. It's not wet. So I purposely wanted to show you what's going to happen. Your dot will bleed. If you had used your masking, you could have made the dots, painted all the things, peeled off the masking, and then painted in red. See, there's all these different ways to do this. But not everybody's got access to the masking stuff. All right, but it's good to learn all this so that when you have an opportunity to experiment, then you can. Okay, I'm going to put one here on the outer ring. He's just kind of touching here. Let's see, I'm going to put one here. I'm just randomly picking little spots to put my little leaves, my little berries. If you're doing a warm color ring around the moon, maybe you want to do green. So that's what I did in this one. I actually had little green dots. So just know that there's other ways to interpret your color choices. Put one here. How many do I have so far? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's going to be a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm going to make this one with a hole in it. 12. This one's got a little center to it. 13. 14. All right, I'm going to show you how to use my marker on some of the others. So, just like that. They're going to look more purple when I put red over blue. So that's what's happening there. I can't wait to see your art. I'm sure you're doing a fabulous job. If for some reason you're chiming in late, or you just are just now joining us on YouTube, please feel free to email me. And you can talk to me about the materials I'm using or an upcoming class, so that we can connect, and hopefully I can encourage you and help you along. You can see my email address right up here, deborahgoleyart.com. And this happens to be my PayPal account. If you feel so inclined to donate a tip for my time and materials, I greatly appreciate it. I'm so thankful that I've been able to bring these classes to the city of Goodyear and partnering with them during a time when we haven't been able to meet in person. And all of your additional help monetarily helps me continue to get equipment and lighting and internet space and all the things that I had no clue I was going to need to be able to continue to do art in a different way. Okay, I don't know if I've got 25 or 24. I'm not going to bother counting them all, but I think I love that I have some done in paint. I did some in with the marker. Maybe in the I love the ones in the marker. They're not as bright as the ones done with paint, and that's great because they're further away from the moon. So I'm kind of liking the way that that actually happened, and I didn't even think about that. So that's really good. Okay, I am going to now think about the actual branches themselves. So I told you a little bit at the introduction about India ink. This stuff is fabulous. One of these may seem like a whole lot of money, but it will last you probably your entire painting decade if you treat it nicely and you only pour a little bit at a time like I do in a tiny little restaurant cup. So I just have a little cup of it, and actually it's not even probably a ½ inch, ¼ inch in the bottom here. And I keep a lid over the top, and it will probably stay about 3 weeks without drying up and sticking to the edge of the plastic so that I can finish a project. If you pour all that out too soon, you know, you might you're going to waste it. And it's great because it's waterproof. The Asians have been using it for so long in their art form. They use it for calligraphy and their beautiful Japanese prints. And while this was actually done in acrylic, right, to make that heavy black, because black is opaque, it covers over a multitude of things. We can still do it in watercolor, and we can try the India ink. You can also get out a marker. As I said in the beginning, it's not really good to use your Sharpies because they're not acid-free. If you have an acid-free pen, that would be great. I know most people just have these laying around, so that's why I chose to do this. But just know about 10 years from now, you're going to need to go over your branch lines with either a permanent marker that's acid-free or some India ink. Or you can use your black watercolor. So I'm going to show you all 3 techniques because anyway, this is going to fade after 10 years and it's going to kind of eat through your paper. So you definitely want to protect your artwork as much as you can. But I want to show you to use what you have and have fun creating. Okay, so let's try to draw some branches. Now I'm going to show you on a little practice paper over here how to draw a branch. You're going to actually use your round brush, and we're going to kind of little twist it around, make it really fun. Let's start out with doing the black watercolor. So I'm dipping into my black watercolor, and I'm going to start from an edge. Let's start from this edge over here. I got more room over here. And I can be fat with it, like I'm pushing on the breadth of the brush, but then I'm going to twist my hand and I can get skinny down to a point, to the point of the brush. So let's try that again. So we're going to go fat and then twist your brush and you can get skinny. I like how they're also pointing toward the moon, like they're growing toward the sunlight, moonlight. Let's try that again. Push down, start to lift your arm and pull up to get that skinny line. Okay? All right, now let's try it with India ink. Okay, once you dip your brush into India ink, and then back in the water, it's going to contaminate your water. It's going to turn really black. So try not to keep double dipping in your water that you're using to clean your brushes. Okay, so you don't need much. India ink is really black and it's going to go a long way. Again, I'm going to push down, twist, Pull it up. Believe it or not, that's a little bit darker than my watercolor black. Both of these will work. This one will be waterproof, and this one could, if your blue is not dry, it could actually blend with it and cause a big problem. All right, now, what if I want to use a Sharpie? I have a Sharpie and I have a skinny Sharpie. I could draw it first in skinny Sharpie for my permanent marker, kind of plan it out, right? And then I could fill it in with my fat. If you want to do that. Again, just know it's not acid-free. But in a pinch, that makes a nice big black line. All right, are we ready? Let's do it. Let's do it. Okay, so I am going to draw half of them with India and half of them with my black watercolor. I'm going to start with the black watercolor. I'm going to work in the areas that I know are completely dry. So I think this moon is still a little wet right there. I'm going to avoid that. I'm going to go up here in this area. See if that's right. Yeah, that's dry. I'm going to push down. And then I'm going to pull my hand across while I twist. Okay, and I think it's going right into the moon, just like that. This is a really good lesson for just learning about brush technique and how to twist your arm to get it to go from big to skinny. All right, let's try it again. Look how I'm choking way up on the brush too. I'm not down here on the metal part. I'm really letting my arm do the work. Go toward my little dot. It's okay if it goes over the dot, by the dot, right? Starting to look like a nice little ball painting. All right, maybe I'll have another little brush going off. I like to make little Ys with my branches, so I have this kind of Y thing going on. You can see that there was a little bit of wet area there and it did smudge. I don't care, it still looks kind of cool to me. All right, let's start. See, that's still wet, that's still a little wet. How about over here? Yeah. Okay. And how about, I'm going to connect that one to this one eventually. It's just too wet still. I'm really liking the black out of my little watercolor pan. It's acting just like India ink. I guess because I don't have it real wet. The only thing I did was dip my brush in a little water. All right. It's too dry now. I got to put my brush back in the water. Okay, I'm going to push down the breadth of the brush, and then I'm going to twist my arm to get a skinnier line. Make little Ys. You could do a poem over the top of this. You could do it in calligraphy with your black. If you know me, I don't use much black, but there are times when it's the perfect color, even though it's not a color, but it's the perfect thing to use when you're trying to do a silhouette or a graphic art. All right, I'm going to try over here now, even if it might not be. I connected it with that one. Okay, let's try some India ink because I'm just dying to do it. I don't even need to clean my brush. I'm just going to dip it into the India ink because I can. Wow. So it's less likely to bleed. Whoops, I dipped it back in the other thing. I keep dipping it in the watercolor. And less in the India ink. Ooh, I even like that little skippity doo out there. And I think I want these two to cross and hold hands. So I'm going to cross the canvas like that. Kind of looking a little spooky, huh? And this guy needs to be connected somehow. A few more little Y's going on here. You're the artist. You decide when is too much. You don't want to put more than you need. Okay, let's try just a little bit. If you're all you have is a Sharpie, I just want to show you that you could have done that. Like over here, I could just put a little more Sharpie on that and then just fill that in. So that's always a possibility, using a Sharpie on there. And let's see, remember this area here that I had to wait to dry? Let's see if it's actually dry. I'm going to take a napkin that's not wet. Make sure, and we're going to make a happy accident out of that first blob that I made there. So we're going to take our brush, dip it into the India ink, pull it across, engage that little dot there, and then I'm going to make a leaf out of my mistake. So I'm going to let the India ink dry just a bit before I put some of that red back in. What about these three little floaters here? I need to engage them somehow. So I'm going to attach them. I'm using my little rigger brush now with a little bit of India ink on the end just to get even skinnier lines. That's what's nice about the rigger. Looks like my trees are attracted to the light. They definitely are during the day. And maybe these hold hands a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to wait till that dries, and then I'm going to put a little red dot right there. In the meantime, speaking of leaves and red dots, I wanted to just kind of give you a preview of what's to come. So here happens to be the acrylic painting that we're going to be doing November 5th. It happens to be a close-up of leaves overlapping, inspired by Georgia O'Keeffe. She didn't do any leaves, but I just love how she zooms in on flowers, so I thought I would do it with leaves. So we're going to have fun with that November the 5th at 5:45. So you'll want to register with the City of Goodyear if you want to be able to chat with me during the process, if you want to be able to show me your work. That's the only way I'll be able to chat with you, unless you do so afterwards, which is fine too. And then on the next painting, or the last one that we're going to do this 2020, happens to be an owl. So he's in Moonlight. So we have Moonlight here, and then this one that kind of seems dark as well. This will be a Tuesday class in watercolor, but you could give him a fun little Santa hat if you'd like. This will be November the 10th. So it'll work for fall, and it'll also work for doing a project for Christmas time, if you want to give them a little hat. This one's called Owls Are Out. So again, I'm kind of picking up on the round theme of doing art in the round on a Tuesday at 11 o'clock. And that's the last two that we have. If you need supplies for either of these classes, you can go to my Etsy site and you'll be able to order them in advance. You need to order them now, though, so they have time to get picked up or shipped to you. If you need to local pick them up, you'll be able to pick them up from the city, and you'll have a picture of what we're painting, and you'll have all the supplies you need to do the project. You'll have your paints, you'll have brushes in there, and your canvas, and a little apron I throw in there. So keep that in mind if you feel like you are rushed for time during this season and don't have time to pick up your supplies. Okay, I think I've given this enough time for me to go ahead and put a little red dot there. My Etsy site, if you just put in Deborah Goley, you'll find it. Or email me at deborahgoleyart.com and I'll send you the link so that you can order your supplies. I happen to think it's a great idea, especially as a gift. You could send it to someone, you know, even if they're in an assisted living facility and they can't get out or they can't go get somebody to go get them something. You could have their supplies delivered to them and they'd be able to do the project. They could just listen to the video either live or later and do the project. So painting supplies are nice gifts to give people. I know I've always given my kids like a little gift card to one of the box art stores so that they can pick out the supplies they want to do a project. Okay, I think I have just about everything in except for my name. I'm going to put my name on there. You can see over here in the corner, I actually signed it. I'm also going to look at areas where I might be able to pop up a little more green, just kind of going around and adding a little bit more flair. I'm going to dry brush a little bit of green back in. I really want it to be a tad bit darker back there. I bet by this point you got a really beautiful painting for the fall. And feel free to add a poem to it. Send it, make note cards out of it. That would be fun. And it wasn't that hard. We did giraffes last. If you were in my giraffe class, you can watch that video and see how you like it. I try to mix up the themes so that there's something for everybody. I don't want anybody to think, oh, I don't love giraffes, so I'm not going to chime in. Well, maybe you like doing moons, or maybe you just like to paint. Doesn't matter what it is. Okay, I am actually going to sign my name. I'm going to use, I think, some red down here because it kind of goes with the berries or the leaves. G-O-O. Usually it takes, when you're watercoloring and putting your initials or your name on there, you're going to have to dip with each letter and don't have your color watered down. You want to make sure that it's mostly tint so that you tint pigment so that it doesn't all just bleed together like that. So That's kind of the trick to signing your name. Okay, I'm going to pull the tape just to see how it's looking, because that's always just fun, the big reveal. Who doesn't love that? Pull the tape away from the painting. If you pull it into the painting, you're going to rip your scene, not scene. Okay, so there's one side. I'll just go ahead and take it across the top. I'm pulling away from the picture. If it's still wet up there, don't pull it just yet, because you might get leakage in the tape. I happen to use 3M tape. It's not because I own stock or anything. It's just actually a better quality tape. I paint murals and canvas commissions and all kinds of things, and this is definitely my go-to tape. Okay. I also, a lot of you don't know how I prep the paper before I tape it down, and I just wanted to go over that with you too with the few minutes we have left. I actually spritz a little bit of, like I put 2 little sprays on the back of the canvas. So I'll go, and then I'll take my hand and wipe it all over the canvas, let it dry, then I tape it down. So that actually flattens out the canvas a little bit better, because once you start adding water, it's going to tend to curl, right? And after this is totally dry, I can put some coffee table books on top and get it more flattened and ready to go underneath glass or plexiglass. You need to protect your watercolor paintings by putting them under glass or watercolor plexiglass or glass, because they could be damaged by somebody actually sneezing on it or wiping their hand on it. Any moisture in the air is actually going to mess up your beautiful painting, and that will not be fun. Okay, I think we have actually gotten to the point where you probably have a beautiful masterpiece. And if anyone wants to contact me and tell me and share with me how they enjoyed this class, or wants to show me their work, I would love that. You can just email me right here, deborahgoleyart.com. We also have a gallery associated with the city of Goodyear, and it's so beautiful. It is virtual, and what we do is we take your art and we actually put it into a gallery setting where you can peruse, go walk around the gallery as if you were there and look at the art hanging on the wall from all the classes that I have taught for the last 5 months with the city. I really enjoyed my time with the city, and I only have 2 classes left. And if you're enjoying this and you want to take some of my private lessons, I do have an adult group class that meets weekly. They work at their own pace using my slides and videos. So there's different ways to connect if you're enjoying this and you want to take it a little bit further. So don't feel like just because there's just a few left that you can't find me, because you can, and you can keep on creating. Don't forget that you can sign up to do the owl. That will be fun. And don't forget you can sign up to do in acrylic the leaves. So lots of opportunities to keep creating. And don't forget to take time. I don't think we spend enough time just resting in our right side of our brain and just letting the paint flow across the canvas and seeing where it might take you. You might discover something you didn't even know about yourself. So enjoy.